to episode... I forgot to look up the episode number, as I always do. But welcome to the Making Stories podcast and this brand new episode. I'm Hannah-Lisa, your host for today and always. And here at Making Stories, we're all about knitting sustainably. So I'm chatting in this podcast about what's on my needles, all in or mostly in sustainable yarns, and what is coming to the shop, and often a little glimpse behind the scenes, which is also what I want to start with today. Before I do that though, let me just welcome all of you who are new here. I am so glad that you made your way here, and everyone who has been or is a returning viewer of the podcast, a very, very warm welcome. I hope you have your knitting and a cup of hot something. I have my travel mug with some tea. Not the prettiest mug, but it does the job. So that's what I'm going to be drinking today. Before we get into the proper episode, let me introduce you to the new setup. I have been renovating what used to be the yarn cave and what I now affectionately call the studio, because it's gotten so much nicer and it doesn't feel like a cave at all anymore. If you've been following Making Stories for a while, you will know that we started out originally as a publisher, producing knitting books and then later on a knitting magazine. And then about 2 years ago, in the summer and then fall of 2021, I made the decision to start carrying sustainably produced yarns here at Making Stories as well. So we are now an online shop focusing on sustainably sourced yarns and notions, with a site of patterns and publications. And when we first embarked on that journey of offering yarns, we were still working with a fulfillment partner here in Berlin for our magazines, and I knew that when we started to sell yarns, I would have to take fulfillment of the orders into my own hands. The fulfillment center that we worked with was lovely, but also there were quite a few hiccups in terms of sending out orders, just sort of orders missed and wrong magazine issues sent out, all of those things. Not a lot, but enough that I didn't feel comfortable handing over the fulfillment of something much more complex like yarn, which comes with different brands and different dye lots, and often orders that combine different yarns, to someone who wasn't us. And so I embarked on this journey of finding a space that could become our sort of fulfillment center. I found something that is about 7-8 minutes walking distance, 3 minutes by bike from where we live, which was really important to me because I wanted to be able to walk there, but I also didn't want it to be in our home, let alone we don't have space for that, but I wanted it to be in a separate building essentially. And so we've had this space that I'm sitting in now for about 2 years. It's gonna be 2.5 years in January, or in December actually. We moved here in June of 2021. And for the longest time, all of this, like the wall that you see behind me, but then also the wall that I'm looking at, and the back room, was filled with these rolling containers that had all of our back issues carefully sorted into boxes on them. And it was functional, but not terribly functional. I had a packing table set up, and then all of the yarns were in these big IKEA boxes that you probably know. And they were just standing around on the floor, stacked on top of one another. And as our yarn selection grew, so grew those stacks of boxes. And I realized, I think probably in the spring, that I started dreading going to the yarn cave. that it felt like such a weight every time that I came here. And I started asking myself why that was. And I realized that it was almost the physical weight of all of the back issues. See, in February, we did a big back issue sale that was really successful. Like, we sold a lot of back issues, and by a lot I mean hundreds of back issues, and I was super happy. And I packed my butt off for about a week, sort of packing up all of these orders, and then I had a very candid conversation with my dear husband David, when I was like, oh, this was so successful and we sold so many back issues. And he asked the numbers and I shared them with him. I was like, well, 200 of these, 100 of these and stuff. And he was like, well, how many do you have left? And I was like, well, I reckon about like 1,500 of Breeze, and then maybe like 500, 600 of the first magazine issues. And he looked at me and he was like, you're never going to sell all of these, are you? And that was really hard. It was really hard to hear. I think mostly because it was something that I had felt deep down inside for quite some time, that there was no way that we were going to sell all of these. And it made me really sad, because it made me feel like a failure. And I also felt that I was in this position where I had to face this failure every single time that I was going into the yarn cave. And that took the joy out of something that I actually really, really love, which is picking and packing your orders. But every time I was just faced with this quite literally walls of boxes with magazines and books inside that I knew were just going to be there. And yes, maybe we would chip away at them slowly over more back issue sales and more back issue sales, but I also knew that I didn't really want that for the rest of, I don't know however long we're going to be in this space. So that was in the spring. And then in the summer, my dear friend Ulysse from Woollentwine came over for a couple of days to exhibit with me at Wedding Wool Weekend, which is a small yarn festival here in Berlin. And I talked with Ulysse about this. I think we visited the yarn cave and she was like, well, this is a lot of back issues. I was like, yeah, and I don't really know what to do about them. And Ulysse shared a story with me that when she was in uni, there was this little company that would take, like wrong prints of materials off of them and transform them into notebooks. And she was like, well, maybe think about whether you can transform those back issues into something else. And I was like, okay, this is a great idea. And then I let that sit for a few months. And then earlier in the fall, I was like, well, this has been on my to-do list for a good few months now. I want to do something about the back issues. And so I started investigating. I think I shared about that in the last podcast episode. I started investigating and it turned out and like reached out to a few companies that were working with recycled paper. And it turned out that none of them could use sort of recycled or like paper that they would have to recycle themselves. I reached out finally to our printer and asked if they had any ideas. And they put me in touch with a local sports club who is collecting paper to put into the recycling cycle again. And they get a little bit of money for the paper that they collect, and they invest that into new kids' sports equipment. So that's what we did with all of the back issues. And raised a bit of money for new kids' sports equipment like that. And that made me very, very happy. So I was faced with this beautiful space now. FaceTimed with Ulysse, decided on a configuration that I wanted. So I am in the front room right now. Opposite me is a long wall of IKEA Ivar shelves that host the the boxes, the yarn boxes, which is beautiful and much more practical. And then I have this entire wall here where there's a new chair and there's a plant and there's nothing there. There's enough space for another wall of Ivars if we need it. And then in the back room, which is over there, I have my 2 little shelves that I have for shows, which hold all of our notions and little goodies, and then a little bit of, a lovely new packing table situation, because I moved the packing table as per the suggestion of Eula to the back room. And there's a little nook in front of a window that overlooks the courtyard. Or backyard. It's not really a courtyard, it's just a backyard that has some trees and some bikes, and there's a little daycare garden out there from the daycare that's next door, so that's really nice, that I can look out the window when I pack your orders there. And there's another little cupboard there where I have all of the little bits and pieces, postcards, stuff like that. And I am so happy with this. I am so happy with this space. And the more that I worked away on this, the more I realized that this is a space that I actually want to spend time in, and that I could also use for some things that hadn't even crossed my mind before, like taking my product photos or recording the podcast. Not that I don't love recording the podcast at home, but honestly, it always is quite a bit of a mess, because all of the bits and pieces that I need to record the podcast, starting from the tripod to the microphone to the camera to the actual physical chair that I record in, all of them have to be transported into the one nook that I like for recording the podcast in our home. And so I do all of that, and then I record the podcast, and then I have to put it all back, and that is something that I do because I love recording this podcast, but also it's a lot of work and it's not really efficient. And so the more that I saw this space coming together, the more I was really inspired to use this also for more work related things than just packing the orders. So I moved all of the equipment for photography and for videography over here, and I started taking product photos here, and now this is the first podcast episode that I'm recording here. So I chose this little nook, and the only thing that I don't quite like, and I'm looking up because it's right up above me, is the light, because we have neon light here. Thankfully, like the one here is a bit warmer, the one over there is not very warm. And while there is a big window front up there, it doesn't really do very much at this time of the year for the lighting of this space. It's still quite dark. Plus, there's a big street there and quite a lot of foot traffic. And so I don't feel super comfortable recording this while having the curtain that's there open to let in the light. So I am trying this for the first time, with this lighting situation and sort of some adjustments to the camera. I quite like how it looks on my laptop screen. I hope that it looks okay afterwards as well. The colors do look very true to how they actually look, so that's also always a bonus. The other thing that I am trying out is the microphone situation. So I have an external microphone that I use to record, and I always have to try a little bit where I put it so that it picks up my voice well, but it doesn't really pick up the outside noise. So if I haven't got that completely right and you hear some cars in the background, I'm really sorry. I'm gonna realize that, or I'm gonna recognize that when I edit it, and then I'll know to put the microphone into a slightly different place next time. So all that to say, a very warm welcome to this new space. If you'd like to see a tour of this space, do let me know. I don't know if that's something that you're interested in. It's not something that I've ever done before. So yeah, do let me know. And let me just quickly take a little sip of my tea. It's going to be really hot. But good. It's gotten quite cold. And I have turned on the heating here. which is not something that I usually do. But because I am wearing what I'm wearing, I thought it would be good to have a little bit of extra heat. So what do I have in store for you today? I want to talk a teeny tiny little bit about the last podcast episode and some of the comments that I got under it. And then I have 2 finished objects, a work in progress, and a swatch that I want to show you. And then lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming to the shop this Wednesday, so November 15th. Before we do that, let me quickly check that I am recording. Yes, I am recording. So, okay, in my last podcast episode, I talked a bit about test knitting, and we had really nice conversations in the comment section below the last video about test knitting, and a lot of really good ideas on how we could improve our test knitting process. If you sort of want to hear more about the context of this, do check out the last podcast episode if you haven't watched it already. And I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who took the time and wrote a comment and shared their ideas. There were a lot of really thoughtful ideas there, and I was also really happy to hear from people who had applied for test knits or who have test knit with us before, that they thought that most of the process is actually really good. The one thing that a lot of comments mentioned, both from aspiring as well as previous test knitters, was that you enjoy having a space to connect with other test knitters. And so that is something that we are going to do as of our next test knit. And our wonderful Izabela, who you might know as our customer happiness manager, has very kindly offered to moderate that space so that our tech editors and test knitting managers, Jess and Jen, can focus on the patterns. And Izabela does what she does excellently, which is interact with all of you. And we are still in the middle of, or not we, because I'm not a micromanager. I hire people because I think they're better at what they do than I would be. So it's up to Jen, Jess, and Izabela to decide how exactly that space is going to look like. But knowing the 3 of them, I know that it's going to be a really good experience and very well thought through. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a really nice addition. Izabela also offered to help me with our next knit along, because I also shared in the last episode that because of the changes to how Instagram uses hashtags, I won't be hosting knit alongs on Instagram anymore, purely because the hashtags, if you click on a hashtag, it doesn't show all of the posts with it anymore, and that's just really dumb. I don't really know why Instagram decided that, but it is what it is. Just completely renders the platform unusable for Cals. So I'm going to be working with Izabela on figuring out where to host our next knit along, but we have a little bit of time for that, so that's going to be the knit along for issue 11 that launches in March. Let's talk about some knitting, shall we? I want to start with the elephant in the room, which is what I'm wearing, because it's one of 2 finished objects that I want to share with you today. This is my Theophrastus tee, and I'm going to stand up so that you can see it. Okay, I have to figure out how to actually show something, like maybe like this. Because, there's a wall behind me. I can't just like climb up or something. I could actually. So so this is my Theophrastus tee, which is a pattern by Valerie Rachel, who goes by Nordlige Skog on Instagram. And this was originally published in our issue 9. Now I do not have a single copy of issue 9 in this space. I have one at home, which is my own personal copy. We've been sold out of print copies of issue 9 forever. So I can't show you the original pictures in print, but I'm going to insert a little picture here. And I really, really, really love this. So I really wanted to get it done for this podcast episode, which I managed, which makes me really happy. The pattern is a top-down raglan t-shirt. So you can see the raglan lines here. And if I put these up, you can see the cute little sleeves. I made mine a bit more cropped than the pattern calls for. I knit quite a few summery t-shirts this year, and I really experimented with length. To get to the length that I wanted of this, I went with the length of my Blossom tee, which is the first one that I made. It's also from issue 9. It's a beautiful v-neck t-shirt. And what I did, like, I really like that length because it looks really nice tucked in, but also not tucked in. What I just did to measure this, because it's not top down, is once I started approaching the length where I thought, okay, this might be the same length as the Blossom tee minus the hem, I just put this on top of the Blossom tee, and then I eyeballed it to the length, and it's come out at the same length. So that makes me really, really happy. With this pattern, you knit the t-shirt first. I'm going to talk about the yarn when I'm done talking about the pattern. And then it's just soothing stockinette, so it's perfect for TV knitting, with some twisted rib for the neckline and the hem. The only modification that I did for this part of the pattern is that I didn't do a tubular bind off. I just did, I think, Jenny surprisingly stretchy bind off, because I have knit this in a mohair wool silk blend, and I am not good at tubular bind offs. And so I thought, well, if I mess that up and I have to rip it back, that's going to be really painful in this yarn, because it's a fluffy yarn that doesn't have a lot of elasticity, and I'm holding it double in 2 different colors, so that's just going to be a mess. And also, my tubular bind offs just never look as neat as I want them to look. So I did a stretchy one that just looks like you're binding off in pattern, and I did the same thing for the sleeves. So once you're done with the body, you pick up the sleeve stitches and you work just a few rounds in stockinette, and then also some more twisted rib, and then you do that on both sides, and then you're done with that. The only thing that is not stockinette in the pattern is that at some point when you finish the raglan increases, you put in a row of purl stitches here, and that is your anchor point for the 2 ruffles that are the distinctive feature of this t-shirt. I have not blocked this yet. I took this to the studio this morning, knowing that I had packed my steam blocker for here last week, and then when I plugged in the steam blocker, I realized that I had packed the steam blocker. So I have 2. I packed the one that is broken and that I've been meant to repair for 2 years. So no blocking, because I didn't want to wet block it. I think it will be fine with just steam blocking, but that's why the ruffles are a little bit not as nice as they could look like. They're still super cute, I think. When you are done with the t-shirt, you pick up half of the ruffle stitches, or half of the purl stitches for the bottom ruffle, and it has this really cute, how do you call that? Like a seashell pattern, like a little wavy lace pattern. That's really nice. And then, once you're done with the bottom ruffle, you pick up the other half of the purl stitches for the top ruffle, which also has a variation of the same stitch pattern. It's slightly shorter, and it's so that where on the bottom ruffle you have the lace pattern here, On the top ruffle, you have the lace pattern here so that it always changes. So yeah, I think that's really, really, really cute. And what you can see excellently here is that this is actually knit in 2 strands of yarn held together that you then basically split for the ruffles. So the entire body is knit in a lovely marl. I chose quite contrasting colors for mine. So our original sample is in an off-white and a very light sage green. And I chose, as you can see, a white with a slight pink undertone, and a rusty red with a gold undertone, that together create this really beautiful, lovely marled fabric that I really, really adore. Like, I love the color. I love it so much. I knew that I loved the red a little more than the white, so that's why I decided to do the red ruffle on top, because it also pulls out the red of the remaining fabric a bit more, so that the whole t-shirt appears more red than pink. You know, if I had done it the other way around, yeah, no, I didn't like that very much, and I think that was the right choice. It's quite a frilly pattern for me. I mean, it is per definition, right? Because of the ruffles. So it feels really lovely to wear. It's a beautiful fabric, and it's actually quite warm. So super, super nice. I think it's one of the more extravagant pieces in my wardrobe. So I'm not entirely sure well, I have a lot of pieces that will go with this. But it's going to be interesting next spring and summer to see how often I take this out. I still have to get used to actually having knitted summer t-shirts and tops. I haven't really worn them very much this summer. But that's honestly often the case for me. When I cast something off, it feels a little bit too precious for me to wear it. Actually, that's a bit yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. And so it's just a bit like, yeah, we'll see. This will get a lot of wear though, because I really love it. The yarn that I used is a beautiful yarn from Rerum Natura. It's called Bérénice, which like we've carried since they started carrying it, which was earlier in the fall. And it's a gorgeous mixture of mohair, responsibly sourced mohair from South Africa, silk core thread, and some merino darl, which is actually organic. So this is not your typical standard just mohair silk blend, but it has a bit of merino in it, which I think is just a really lovely choice. I think it contributes to the like really beautiful softness of it, and the warmth. I mean, the mohair itself is also really warm, but it's just a really lovely, fabric, and it doesn't itch at all. I know that for some mohair can feel a little bit scratchy, like this doesn't feel like it. Like, I'm just wearing a bra under this. There's no top or anything. So yeah. So I adore this yarn. Like, it's really, we've looked for a long time for a responsibly sourced fluffy yarn, which is actually really hard. I wrote a blog post about this, and also chatted about it in a podcast episode a good few months back, why this is so difficult. And I'm really happy that Rerum Natura took it upon them to create a responsibly and sustainably sourced mohair yarn, or like fluffy yarn, and it's gorgeous. I can't wait to cast on my next project with it. Oh, the colorways that I chose are Badiane, which is the red, and Avoine, which is the white with a slight pinkish undertone. And I knit a size 4 on 4.5 millimeter needles, which gives me a nice amount of ease, but also I don't think there's any like excess fabric bunching or anything like that. So that makes me very, very, very happy. Okay. All right. Definitely need a nicer mug for the studio. Also, that was really hot. This was the first finished object. So I literally finished that yesterday night. I bound off the top ruffle and wove in the ends this morning. So that makes me really happy. Just a little bit of steam blocking still to do, and then we're done. And I've had another finished object for a little, well, I mean, I didn't show it in the last podcast episode because it wasn't finished yet. But this is almost done. The only thing that is left to do is sewing on the buttons, and I am talking about Oran's Joy cardigan. Oops, let me just show you. So, these are the cute little cables on the sleeves. This is a pattern from our kids collection, which is available in print and digitally. And it's a top-down raglan cardigan. Let me just find it for you. No. Where is it? Where has it gone? There we are. Okay. So, this is baby Oran. This was 3 years ago. He was so cute. He's still very, very cute. But also, oh my god. So I started out with I still have really good knitting plans for Oran for this winter, because he definitely needs more warm sweaters. And the first thing that he wanted was a new cardigan, because the one that I made him, I think 2 years ago, that he wore all last winter, he's outgrown. And I made him a Joy cardigan in the largest size, which is for kids of the age of 5 to 6. Oran is quite tall for his age, and it's the same as with with us adults, right? Like sizing approximation per age or per, well, size for us, you know, S, M, L, 36, 38, 40, 42, all of those. That's just very unpredictable. And so what I did was I measured a sweater that fits him really well and looked at the measurements that I had graded the pattern to, and it turned out that the larger size was going to be it. This is like half of a sweater for me, right? Like, it's not as if I'm knitting on for a baby anymore. This took quite some time. Not that I mind, but I was like, whoa, the times of whipping out a baby sweater in a weekend are gone. As I said, it's a top-down raglan sweater. Most of it is stockinette, except for the cute little fake seams that you have. And then you have this cable detail running down the side of the sleeve that then transitions into the cuff. Oops, hello, please focus camera. Yeah. One of the neat things about this pattern is that you pick up the button band and the neckline at the same time and join it with the hems so that you all work it in the round. Sounds a little bit spacey, but it works, and it's really nice. And yeah, as I said, all that I have to do is sew on buttons that he still has to pick out. So we have a collection of red buttons at home, and then this is gonna go into his wardrobe. I also knit this in the Rerum Natura yarn, this time in Ulysse, which is their sport weight woolen spun yarn. That's a blend of merino, darl, and merino from Portugal. And it's a really, really wonderful yarn. Like, this is probably if I had to choose one yarn that I would knit with for the rest of my life, this would be it. Because it is incredibly versatile when it comes to gauge. It is really hard wearing. I've had a sweater. I made myself a citrine sweater from Jewels a good, 7-8 years ago. And I've worn that a million times every winter. And yes, like now it's starting to wear through at the elbows. But oh my God, this yarn has held up so well. And at the same time, it's really soft. It's really like, it's a really beautiful yarn that is perfect also for baby and kids knits. Orin just told me this morning that the sweater that I knit him last year, which he wore a lot last winter, now feels a bit too scratchy for him. That was in another yarn that is definitely more rustic. And I got a bit sad, but then also that's just entirely usual, right? Like kids change their preferences and also what they're comfortable with. So we're gonna try with long sleeves under it, but in the meantime, like I'm really happy that he loves this yarn so much. He picked out the color, which is Aubépine, by the way. So it's this gorgeous red, a really beautiful red for fall and winter, any time of the year really. So yeah, that's Orin's Joy cardigan. Alrighty, let me take another sip of my tea. I hope you have something nice to knit on. Do let me know in the comments what you're knitting on in the moment. At the moment as you're watching this. I'm always curious. I always want to know. I have, except for working on this, knit a lot on 2 secret samples that I can't show you just yet because they are for our winter celebration that's going to happen this year. So there has been more knitting that I can't show you yet. But before I dove into that sample knitting, I actually made quite a bit of progress on my crystal socks. So the crystal socks are from our current issue number 10, and they're a pair of cuff down socks by Izabela Grzybek that feature this really beautiful geometric pattern that's inspired by cut crystal vases. So I'll show you a couple more pictures. So they're really pretty. They were originally designed for Woollentwine's Corriedale sock, which Ulysse has put on hiatus because she started producing her own sock yarn, or having her own sock yarn produced, which is called Ovis. And when she launched it back in, I think, September, I snagged a skein and wanted to cast on a pair of crystal socks with them. And I am very happy to report that I finished my first sock. And isn't this gorgeous? Sorry. Just look at it. Like, look how pretty it is. I just love that pattern so much, and I think it shows up so well in this yarn, which has slightly more halo than the Corriedale sock has, but still really good stitch definition. Which you can see, and it also looks really beautiful in stockinette. So yeah, one fun thing that I had never done before was that Izabela has you work the decreases of the gusset on the sole of the foot, which I think is a really genius idea, and the sock fits super well. So I highly recommend that. A note on sizing though, I have a women's 39 foot size in EU terms, with a foot circumference of about 23 centimeters. I am knitting the smallest size and they fit well, which comes with a 64 stitch count. Now, I ripped these back. I shared about that in the last podcast episode because I originally cast on a larger size and I thought that they would be too big, and they definitely would have been too big. So this size fits really well. So just if you're thinking of knitting them, the sizing runs a little big. If you want to knit something smaller than the smallest size, what you can do is just omit some of the stitches in the stockinette portion so that you don't have to modify the main pattern. That's all that you need to do. So I have one sock done, and the second one I've finished the cuff and knit a little bit. I very sincerely hope that I didn't talk about exactly the same thing already in the last podcast episode, but I do not think so. If so, apologies. So yeah, so this has taken a little bit of a backseat at the moment because I need to finish those 2 samples. Well, one is finished, but the other one I still need to finish. And then I have, oops, just dropped the sock. I have some sample knitting to do, and there's another project that will take priority. So we'll see when I get back to these. But they're very, very fun to knit. I very much enjoyed the first one, and I know that I'm going to enjoy the second one. And that's one of the reasons why they're in a little bit of a timeout right now, because I know when I start knitting on them again, I won't be able to pull myself away from them. And so if there's knitting that has to be done, that needs to happen first. Knitting that has to be done, one of them is a sweater that I really need for the end of January, which is when we're going on a skiing vacation with my parents. So I snowboard and ski since I was a little kid, and we try to make time and space for it every winter. Now, there was a period for a few years where we didn't go because Orin was still a little baby or a toddler, and last year we went on a skiing vacation with him for the first time. So we rented little skis for him, and he went to the ski school for a day, and then we had like a little very gentle slope that we went down with him, and he wasn't too keen, but he also didn't hate it very much, and we both love it so much that we decided that this year we're gonna he's a little bigger, and we think that he's gonna be excited meeting other skids in ski school, so we're gonna go. I have had a Let Lopi colorwork sweater for a long time. That has been my go-to hiking and skiing sweater, and that doesn't fit anymore. So it hasn't fit for a few years, so it's found a beautiful new home with my sister, but that meant that I haven't had a hiking and skiing sweater in quite a while. And last year that was fine because like I was out on the slopes for like a day or two and I just wore one of my other wool sweaters. But I really like having a dedicated hiking and skiing sweater, one that I know that is really warm but also really lightweight, and that I know it's just for that. Maybe that's a little weird, but that's how I am. And so I knew that going into this fall and winter, that was something that I definitely wanted and needed to make. And there's a designer whose patterns I've loved ever since I started knitting, and who makes really beautiful colorwork design. Her name is Wei Xin Chan, and she is the Petite knitter. She lives up in the very north of our planet, which I think is just fabulous. And she makes these beautiful, quite whimsical colorwork sweaters. And so I embarked on a journey to sort of selecting one for me. And then I found one that is knit in one of my all-time favorite yarns. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be fun, if we put together some kits for that, and maybe Wei Xin would like to collaborate with us on those, and that's what we're doing. So that's the swatch that I have to show you, and that's what we're doing for our next shop update, which is the Cozy Winter update happening on November 15th. The pattern that I chose is her Caribou crossing sweater. I'm going to insert a picture of it here. You can see the caribous in my swatch. So it's a top-down colorwork sweater with a colorwork on the yoke. The body and the sleeves are soothing stockinette, and it has these cute caribous like galloping across the yoke, and then there are some other more geometric colorwork motifs that are really pretty. The pattern is written for Manchelopis, which is Wooldreamers unspun yarn. We've carried that since last year, and I adore this. It's really warm, but also really lightweight. And in the combination with color work, this is actually going to be, I think, the hiking and skiing sweater of my dreams, because it's going to be really, really warm, but it also won't be too heavy, like too just like weight wise heavy. Like this swatch just weighs next to nothing, but it's the combination of warmth and lightweightedness, I don't know, that really just does it for me, together with the cute caribous. So I've swatched for this. I was a little bit intimidated because the pattern has you hold the yarn single, and the times that I've knit with unspun before, I've held a double. But because this worked in the round, I found that it's actually not difficult at all. And also color work with unspun held single in the round is also not difficult at all. Like, I hold my yarn when I knit color work, both like my working yarn, both in the left hand. So I'm a continental knitter. It took a little bit of trial and error to tension the yarn correctly, or like so that it wouldn't break all the time. But after the first few rows, it was completely fine. Like, it wasn't more difficult than knitting color work with a spun yarn. You can also, which I tried, if you throw the yarn with one hand, so if you sort of with a one hand knit continental and with the other English, that's also an option for knitting color work. That also works really well for this. And what I really loved about it is that it is it's not the speediest knitting, but I enjoy a project that forces you to slow down a little bit and savor every single stitch. And that is something that usually color work does for me. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed knitting up this swatch. We are going to have 3 kits or 3 different options in the shop. Each kit contains enough yarn to knit one of the 10 sizes that the pattern is graded for. Plus, we always calculate a little bit of buffer so that you can swatch. And it also includes the PDF pattern. And what's really cool is that the PDF pattern comes in 6 different languages. So there's English, but there's also German. And I know that a lot of you have been waiting for us to carry German patterns. So there's a German pattern there. French, Spanish, Icelandic, and Korean. So if you prefer your knitting patterns in one of those languages, if you get the kit, you get the pattern, and it includes all of these languages. So yeah, that makes me very, very happy that we've teamed up with the Petite knitter for this. In terms of that's really important to me, like in terms of compensation and how that works for our kids. So Weixin is going to get the full proceeds of the pattern sales, plus then also a portion of each kit sale, because I think that's only fair. Like, I mean, after all, we're using her pattern. I think she gets 15% as per her affiliate agreement. As I said, 3 different options, 3 different color options. There is going to be the original, which is the colors of the original sample. which is Blanco as the main color. So this is a creamy white. And then Gris Medio as the contrasting color, which is a beautiful medium gray. So these are those two. Then there's going to be the VHL. So the color options that I've chosen, which are in this swatch. And I have chosen Gris Claro, this one here, a light gray as the main color, and Lavanda, this gorgeous, glowing, bright purple as the contrasting color. And then there's going to be the dark, because I know that there are also quite a few of you who really like a color work sweater with a main color in a darker color. That was a lot of colors in one sentence. So the dark is going to have Gris Oscuro, which is the dark gray in Manchelopis as the main color, and Gris Claro, which is the light gray that I have as the main color in my own, as a contrasting one. So this is the third option. Now we are going to restock all of the colors of Manchelopis. We've run out of quite a few of them. I'm just looking at the wall of Manchelopis over there over the last few weeks. And so as of November 15th, which is when we're going to have the shop update, all of the colors will be restocked in enough quantities that you can put together your own kit if the three options are, you know, if they're not your thing. The reason why we're doing three options is because it's a lot of work to set up these kits, and so, you know, setting up a mixing and matching kit is near to impossible. Like, it just takes a lot of time and effort on my side, and that's why I decided to limit it to 3 different color options. But you're more than invited to put together your own kit for the Caribou crossing sweater. We will also have, let me just quickly look at my podcast notes if I forgot anything there. No. Okay. So we will also have a few other little goodies coming to the shop for the Cozy Winter shop update that I have here and that I want to share with you. The first one is that we're going to have 4 different designs of gorgeous bubbles and berries stitch markers. Which are all hand stitched on wool felt by Aude, who is behind Bubbles and Berries. She lives in Edinburgh and she creates the most gorgeous little artworks. So I have the Cozy Winter set. So Winter Hedgerow is this one with little winter berries and a cute little snowflake. Then we have mushrooms, so 3 different mushrooms. And we also have sheep. So it's 3 differently colored sheep, and I love all of them very, very much. So those are the Bubbles and Berries stitch markers. And then we also have a few cute new little needle stoppers. So we are going to have just like one design in 3 different colors this time. So it's these cute little hats that come in gray and blue and pink. Then there's going to be ring stitch markers in a larger circumference than the ones that we already have in the shop. Which are great if you want to have something a little simpler to mark your raglan increases, for example. So there's a set of 9, 3 in rose gold, 3 in gold, and 3 in silver, and they come in this cute little glass tube. And then last but not least, Cozy Winter is not cozy enough for me without a cup of hot chocolate. So for the first time ever, we're going to have hot chocolate bars to melt in 3 different flavors. They're by my very favorite organic chocolate maker, Zotter from Austria. And we're going to have Bitter Classic, which is a very classic winter, like just dark chocolate. This is also vegan. Then we'll have Hazelnut Nougat, which is also vegan, which is a more gentle sort of hazelnutty chocolatey flavor. And we have caramel, which is the only one that's not vegan, which is with milk caramel in it. So a really lovely caramelly flavor. So those are the things that are going to come to the shop update. And the shop update itself is happening on November 15th, which is this Wednesday. And we have 2 different times for the shop update. 9 a.m. Berlin time, so CET, is going to be when our collective members, levels full, Skein and Sweater Quantity, get access. And then at noon, it's going to be the general launch. So if you have been thinking about becoming a member of the collective and you see something that you like, now might be a really good time, because it means you get first dips and there's limited quantities of everything. So yeah, hopefully we've stocked up on enough. But just in case, I want you to know that the collective is an option. I think that was it. I got a little bit distracted there because of the autofocus things, but I think with inserting some B-roll and showing you them up close, I think that's going to be a really nice solution for that, and I'll figure that out for next time. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week, and that I see you in the shop on Wednesday, and that you have something really beautiful on your needles. Do let me know what you're knitting on at the moment. I always enjoy hearing that. And do let me know if you want to have a studio tour here on YouTube at some point of the new studio. Alrighty, see you soon. Bye.